still standing listeners. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Shannon Torrance. I'm your host. And today I am here with my friend, Aliah Whitmore. I'm so excited to have Aliah on the show. I actually used to be the nanny for Aliah's child. She now has two children, who was one of my favorite kids in the world. He was like my kid. And she's also one of the most articulate, intelligent, eloquent person that I've ever met. And the reason I have her on today, as we're talking about stories of resilience, overcoming adversity, is that, well, first of all, I'm going to tell you, Aliah is an integrative breathwork practitioner, holistic health counselor, restorative exercise practitioner, LMT, and PT. I'm going to have her explain what that is. But she's here to talk today about her recovery journey. Both of us are in addiction recovery, and I am so passionate about bringing stories of addiction and overcoming addiction and how people did that and what challenges they may face today. But Ali is such an inspiration to me. I'm going to now let her speak because I'd love for her to share her story, but also to explain a little bit about what she does, because I am so impressed by the fact that not only did she recover and is living a beautiful life and has two beautiful children, she also has dedicated her life to helping other people who need support. So, without further ado, I am welcoming you to the show, Aliah Whitmore. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for asking me. Thank you for inviting me. It's so funny. It feels really lovely to be here with you now because I remember vividly seeing your picture for the first time and messaging you. And it
Yep.
was that feeling of, oh, there she is.
I know. I felt the same way. It was funny because we met each other on, it was like a baby, uh, s- I forget what it was called, not
Yeah.
care.com,
It wasn't
but
care.
it was like babysitters dot or
It's
something.
something like that. Yeah.
And I thought you were going to be when I spoke to you, you were like, hello, in this beautiful voice that you have. And I thought, oh man, she's so intimidating and so like, which you're very strong in your presence, but you just have one of the most beautiful, beautiful hearts. And yeah, it was definitely one of those connections that was so meant to be in my life, that I know that we're part of the same soul family. So it is so exciting to have you here. So I'd love to start just by telling us a little bit about what it is that you do professionally. It is quite a few things, but if you can explain the nature of your work first, that would be so great.
Absolutely. So the nature of my work is somatics, essentially, in the sense of my primary modality is dynamic meditation, or shamatha meditation, which is focus and attention based meditation. And we utilize the breath as a means of focus and attention. But I am a somatic practitioner. So this breath, however we are engaging, or whatever the mechanics are of the breath technique, it is to bring you into greater awareness and consciousness in your sensory perception. One of the primary bits of relief of this work is coming out of this kind of imprisoned, locked up place that many of us exist in with our thoughts, or the moods and tone of what's occurring for us neurologically or intellectually or psycho-emotionally. And we are completely disconnected from this somato-emotional body, from our bodies. Like, we've been locked out of our house. And so this work is about getting you back in your house. And there's a reason why you feel like it's like, yeah, this isn't big enough for you. You need to be all the way in. And so the nature of my work, that is an element of it. Um, the work that I do, I work with people in a variety of different populations. It was very, very clear to me when I began studying, and then my first clinic jobs, right? My first clinic jobs with my RAD-T and my KDAC, when I started going back and working with addicts. In those clinic jobs, you see how profound somatic work is, and breath practice specifically is for people in early recovery. And one of the reasons why is because for a lot of these folks, and I was one of them, because I started using so young, and I got sober when I was 21. So from 12 and a half to 21, it was a train wreck. It was like I was on a suicide mission or something. I mean, certainly when I was in it, that's what it felt like. Now I'm like, oh my God, like something, my soul was like trying to crash my body into something to get my soul out of it. To be like, I don't want to be in this, I don't, this person is hurting too badly. So I got to get out of here. And little did I know that it was just me trying to liberate myself from the kind of trauma that I had gotten used to living in. And so when you have a newly sober, let's say, an opiate addict, a newly sober opiate addict who's young, so their developmental years have been spent overriding their nervous system's capacity to produce hormones that would make them feel joy or help them to feel elevated or exhilaration or to feel closeness to family members. All of that has been circumvented by these opiates they've been on. So they show up to recovery. It's not just broken and beaten. They show up unable to comprehend the notion of any kind of peace in their bodies or joy in their body outside of putting a needle in their veins or, freebasing or whatever. So when you put them on the table and you begin to guide them in a breath and they start to have an experience that's emanating purely from them, an experience that's, I mean, somatic work is this, it's not hypnosis, it's not a sleight of hand. There's no kind of, you're having an experience in your body, and that experience in your body changes your perception of your life. And so when you have someone who's suffering in the way that addicts are suffering when they first get sober, and you put them on a table and you get them to breathe, and the other kind of, this is a little egoic, but it's satisfying. I love it when they're like, fuck this, I don't want to do this shit, this dumb hippie bull. I'm like, yes, yes, it's stupid, it's dumb, but just try it. And then if you hate it, we'll refund your misery. Don't worry, you'll be fine. You won't get nothing to lose. And then they get on the table and their whole body contorts and they cry and they have a release. And then they sit up and they're like, oh my God, oh my God. And I'm like, see, oh,
Yeah.
you're God. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have the power, like God or whatever language you want to use to describe it, but something has anointed you with the power to live exactly how you want to. And you don't have to be enslaved to the thing that we've become convinced we have to be enslaved to just to survive. And the tragedy, the really scary part about addiction just kind of sliding farther to infancy, meaning that people are getting more loaded on scarier drugs way earlier, is that we're not developing human beings with healthy nervous systems. I was 21 when I got sober. All of those developmental years, when my brain was growing, I was inundated. Methamphetamines, opiates, marijuana and alcohol, just like as a basic. Those were like Tic Tacs and Coke and Gatorade. I mean, um, and then I feel really grateful that I came in at 21 and I had 21 to 25. And 25 is the average, right? It's the average age when most people's anatomical brain development is complete. And I really do think that I was able to do some good, solid reparative work in those years because I was in the breath, I was studying, and I was in school to understand and to learn rebirthing and to learn pranic practice and what it was and how it worked. And I was in recovery. And I was very active in recovery. I mean, it's interesting because I didn't go to rehab, but when I got sober, my older brother had gotten sober just a year before. My father had relapsed and come back in. So my dad came in, my brother was about to get a year, and I hit bottom and I came in. So it was like the dominoes fell and we were all in the house together having to like work on recovery together and learn the other piece, which I would argue is the biggest part of recovery, is learn how to be a family. To learn
That's
how to be
so
a family
interesting.
predicated on like principles other than volatility and aggravation, and kind of, you begin to see that, John Bradshaw talked about this a lot, and there's been a lot of great pieces of writing about, addiction as a family disease and how it impacts the family system. But when you're watching it in real time and actually feeling yourself want to go toward a behavior with your loved ones that is going to hurt them, and for the first time making a different choice
Mhm.
and watching a different outcome. And
Yeah.
those were big revelations. They may seem like nickel and dime, but they're really, really big. They're really big. And so, um, yeah, so recovery, I really don't understand my recovery without breath. I don't really understand how. I mean, but I'm also, I came in, I was like, my sponsor was assigned to me. And but it was like, okay, you're gonna go sit next to this person and she'll be your temporary sponsor until you find a sponsor. She's been my sponsor for 20 years.
Oh, that's incredible.
She's been my sponsor for 20 years. I mean, I've worked the steps with her 5, 6 times. And and she's been, I mean, for me, my how they say in the opening of a meeting, like go find out where your car is parked. Make sure it's not parked illegally.
Yeah.
If it's parked incorrectly, go move it now. And that was always the joke. It's like anyone who was trying to look for a reason to leave the meeting.
Right.
Oh, I'm out. Okay, good. I got it out. And for me, your car is parked incorrectly, like default, I'm going to leave is hypocrisy. And so I scan, like my
Wow.
ego scans for hypocrisy because I go, hypocrite, hypocrite, I'm out. I'm not staying. I reserve the right. And I do it all the time. It's a very pathological way of my thinking, part of my thinking. And my sponsor, she knows that. And so she always reminds me, you're going to always find a reason to leave. So you got to find a reason to stay. And it's like, ugh, shit.
I just got full body chills. That's
It's so
beautiful.
real and true.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like that's life. Like, probably that's the dodge. We had like the powers that be, the great creative intelligence had to be like, make them very scared of dying. Make them very scared of dying because we can't have them know that dying is the relief.
For anyone who doesn't know, although I think most of you that are here at this point know that my other podcast is about near-death experiences, that is so true.
You know,
Stay
it's
here, you guys.
it's
You're
like it's
here for a reason.
propaganda. It's
But yeah,
propaganda. I mean, it's like, we are propagandized on such a deep and molecular level.
yeah,
It's down to being alive is propaganda.
yeah, yep. And listen, stay here, you guys. We're here for a reason. We got to go through our trials. But I love that you said that too, because I think that fear of death drives so many people. So just going through life, I've even recently just learned to always say, is this a choice of fear or is this a choice of love? That's it. If I have to make a choice, don't let's simplify it. So so much of us live in this fear of especially of the unknown. So I think we often act on our fear of essentially what it is a fear of death.
Without a doubt. And no one, I mean, and I think that culturally, we as a species historically understood that this is something human beings need support with.
Yes.
And so there was a person or there were people in every community or every village or every environment. Like even, what we had were churches here, right? Like the kind of hoplite real spiritual centers of America were churches or temples and things. And now that's no longer a place that people feel they get the wisdom they need in order to be able to survive this experience. I think that's and we are missing it. We are missing it as a species. And I'm not a religion advocate because I think that
Yeah.
religion
Not
is
either.
a, kind of there's bigotry built into it because anything that tells you this is the truth and nobody else's truth is correct, it's like, okay, that's bigotry.
Yeah.
And like it may be nice, lovely bigotry with fun holidays and stuff, but it's still bigotry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But you know, the experience of us being here with each other with no sense of purpose or fundamental value to this existence that we're in, it's done damage to us. I mean, we are machines and
Mhm.
there's code. And what, our beliefs are the codes that are operating our system. Like that's and we don't have a lot of sour code. We have a lot of corrupted viral code in these machines at this point. And so the breath practice, to come back to your initial
Yeah.
question of what my workaday life is, it's helping people get to a hard reset place where they feel like wait a minute, that's me. Wait a minute, that's me. That's me. That's actually me. And can kind of tune out all the noise and the propaganda and the cacophony of stimulus that we're all inundated with, and get connected to that voice that's really, it's quiet, and it's been drowned out by a lot of other sound and vibration. But the moment that a person feels reconnected to that, it's profound, because everything changes. Everything
Yeah.
changes. It's like all of a sudden they discovered there was a center, that they had a center that they didn't know they could touch. And it was like, oh, no, no, that's yours. Nobody else can touch that. And what we have been convinced of is that it's not there. It's out there. It's out here. And it's like, that's the biggest lie, the biggest criminal act that's kind of forced us to forfeit our birthright, which is you're connected to the center from the time you come in. You don't have to seek it. It's right there. We just have to reconnect with the original voice. We have to reconnect with the wisdom that is part of us, you know. And I think that when we are able to do that, there's answers. I mean, I think that's the reality of us in recovery, is the realization of like, oh, it's here. It's just been here. Oh, it's just been here all along. And I've been slamming my head into walls. I've been crashing cars and breaking up families. And all I had to do was go in here.
Right. Yes. It's like Glinda said to Dorothy about you didn't ever need the shoes. You had the power inside of yourself the whole time. And
There's
that's
no
such,
place like home.
there's, ooh,
And we have been taught that our home is not here. We've been, I mean, we've been taught, or we just think, or I don't know. I don't know who to blame. I'm not here to blame people, but, but for whatever reason, a lot of us have been distracted away from a truth, your truth. And my position is, the distraction from that truth has led us on a path that we're on now. And it's a path that we're like marching to our death, but we're agreeing to it and we don't know why. And so it's like, that's the problem. Because if you're connected to center, you stop and go, hold on a minute, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think I want to do this.
that is the gift of recovery. That is so well said. I love that. I would love to hear all of that has so much wisdom in it. That's one of the things I love about you. And it's sometimes easier to sit and compliment someone in front of other people so they don't get so embarrassed. But I'm always like, this woman has I always used to say about you, like, Alia knows everything about everything, and I know you wouldn't agree, but, like, there's like, pick a topic and you'll go off on, like, a TED Talk for, like, an hour, any topic, open up a dictionary or open up a thesaurus and be like, "This," and you'll know so much about it, but this all comes from personal experience, which I love, and I would love to hear whatever you're comfortable sharing about sort of how your own addiction developed, and we'll just start there because, of course, I want to hear too what your process was and how you found your way out of it. But it's so important too to understand where you started from.
Yeah. Um, my addictions started. I mean, I shared with you my story, my Blue Velvet story. Uh,
Yes,
I
love this. Tell it.
getting high on albuterol and huffing a cigarette case. So I always knew that I liked it.
Yes.
But really, the place that I've arrived at in terms of trying to understand or getting perspective about my addiction is, I really do believe that I am like a true codependent. I am I mean, the place that the most pathological characteristic in me, in the sense that it is automatic, it is very strong, and I do it without thinking about it, is caretaking people, please. And I grew up in an environment, and I'm still kind of really teasing out the reality, because I grew up in a chaotic environment, but I was told it wasn't a chaotic environment.
Hmm.
So I grew up in an environment where I felt really unmoored and anxious and like my first memories as a kid were of like being anxious, I I'm a tightly wound individual on my own innately, I think. But I grew up in an environment that was kind of unpredictable. And it lacked consistency. There were elements that were consistent, but it lacked consistency. And anytime a human being in my family would complain or express distress about that, we were accused of seeking attention or creating problems where there were none. And so that experience of you have to quiet the distress somehow because they don't want to hear it. And I know that's not unique to me. There's nothing, I think that's how a lot of people grow up. So for me, um, finding ways to quiet my internal distress and quiet other people's external distress became my MO. And so I quieted my internal distress with food. I food and eating and food as a real kind of salve, as a palliative medicine for emotional distress was something I learned really early on. And I'm from an addicted family, so there was a lot of addictive elements around. There was a lot of alcohol around and a lot of, it was just, we partied. It was just, that was it. That was life. My family's culture is from the Caribbean, so that was there. And my father's culture became Caribbean culture, but his culture was a culture of heartbreak. And then when you learn anything about West Indian, Caribbean culture, most of the world, oh, that culture is about heartbreak too. Oh, great, great. We're all heartbroken and pouring alcohol on it.
Yeah.
So I grew up in an environment where volatility, unpredictability, disorganized emotional response um were commonplace. And trying to find a way to navigate it and to survive it, kind of identified distress and stress management as a way to take care of myself in ways that I couldn't be looked after by my family, and to take care of my family in ways that they needed looking after. And so people pleasing and distracting when bad things would happen, distracting, kind of like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look over here, or creating another distress response in the middle of a distressing environment to pull focus, which is another thing that I did, where like something would be happening in the household, there would be drinking involved, people would be upset, their voices would be raising, and I would hurt myself really bad. Like, and I wasn't doing this consciously as far as I
Yeah.
knew, but like I would like run face first into a plate glass window and
Right.
shatter it. But I mean, now like my heart breaks because I realized like, holy shit, that kid was just trying to run away.
Yeah.
She was just trying to get out of there and smash face first into a piece of glass and inadvertently stopped whatever was happening. But it was, I think of her now. I think of me as a child, and I mean, I have a lot of gratitude for that little kid because she tolerated shit that I could not tolerate today. She tolerated abusive relationships and language, and she tolerated a lot and stayed engaged. I mean, I think that that's part of, the inner child work that is part of recovery, which I wish was a bigger part of recovery, is like you have to say thank you to this child who may have been an acting out lunatic, because then maybe that's all the best that you could do at that age, to try and not die in that environment. When you're a child, murder is like right neck in front of your face and you don't get it. You don't know what you're looking at. And so now we look back and go, oh my God, like I was with this person all the time. And now I know what kind of person that was. And as a kid, I had no clue. I was not picking up. I was not picking up on it. One of the primary reasons was because I was from an environment where danger was just kind of part of the environment. Distress was just kind of part of the environment. So you're not picking up on cues in the world of like, that person's dangerous. This is not a good place to go. Your sensory rods and cones get all flipped around. You don't really know how to listen to that part of you, because why? In order to survive in that environment, you had to do what? You had to deny your center. I had to deny the fact that I don't like this. I don't want to be here. That's what I felt. That was true. The truth was I wanted to grab the nearest safe adult and say, take me away from, I want to go. But I didn't do that because I couldn't. In order to stay connected to my family, I had to violate this authentic truth, this center point. So we see how it gets reinforced. It gets reinforced, and it's not reinforced by our families because they're horrible people. No, it's because it was done to them. They don't know either. They're just kind of half dead, half conscious, doing their life too. You know what I mean? And so, so to more simply answer the question, my codependency was the mother of my addiction. Because at some point or another, codependency, people pleasing, it gets very ugly. It gets very dark. It gets really distorted. And you get really attached to people responding to you in a way that you need them to respond to you in order for you to feel okay. So now you realize, as a codependent, I'm addicted to people and how they make me feel. And I'm addicted and I'm relying on them to make me feel the way I need to feel about me. So I will beat those people as hard as I need to to get them to, right? And I've had a lot of roundtables with big brain clinicians around the fact that I believe and that this is another way that narcissism is born. It's a
Talk about that. Yeah, that's really
self-protection
interesting.
mechanism. It's I am right. I have to be right. You have to agree with me because if you don't, I cease to exist.
Yeah.
Right? My ability to please you, it equals to my ability to survive. So I have to be right and you have to be pleased because if I'm not and you're not, then I cease to exist. And so it's like you see how and then of course I'm talking about my codependency is really what gave birth to my addiction. And addictive archetypes are narcissistic archetypes. That's the problem. That's the problem with the addict is they can see nothing beyond what they want or need in order to feed their addiction. You know. And so my addiction merely became a way to manage the new distress born out of being so emotionally controlling, but being so emotionally controlled by if people were pleased with me or not and satisfied with me or not. Um, and so the dope, meth and opiates and marijuana and alcohol and um, they were just medicines to try and manage the way that I had lived my life, or the way I'd been living my life, which had become really distressing. And all of my relationships were kind of grew into this weird distorted shape because of the way that I operated. And the way that I operated resulted in me selecting certain kinds of people to have in my life. I mean, it all, it's not one isolated, there's no either or. And so one of the most important things for me in recovery has been this continued willingness to reinvest in healthy evolution. And that, you hear it in the rooms, like, what kept you sober last year might not keep you sober this year. Like you'll kind of hear it in the rooms. The dilemma that I face with, like, for instance, AA, is that while there's really powerful tools, I would argue that some of the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12-step foundation are foundational for all people, and everybody would benefit by exploring some of these ideas. But the culture of AA very often is a fear-based culture that tells people, the analogy I give to my clients is, I love AA, but AA is like a society that was built in the waiting room of the ER. And when you come in, you're bleeding out, and they're like, get in there, get up,
Yeah.
fluid, stop the bleeding, stat, right? And like everyone's like, is he gonna make it? Is she gonna make it? Are they gonna make it? And then you make it, and you come out of the ER, but then they're like, sit here, we got to save a seat for you in the waiting room. And now you're told you can never leave the waiting room of the ER.
Right.
Don't go out there. Like it's gonna happen again. I mean, fear is it's a it's a mechanical element of how the program works. And I think that for me, if I hadn't begun, I mean, I began this process of recovery in integrating another view, oppositional view, right? Like, because, deism, which is what 12 step is, it's based on God, is antithetical to the rebirthing concepts. And for me, it was perfect because, again, I am bifurcated. There is no one singular idea that speaks 100% truth to me. Things only make sense when I hybridize them. And I think that healthy opposition has been one of my greatest, it's been one of my greatest vehicles, is connecting with people that I don't align with and finding wisdom in their point of view and still not aligning with them, but seeing the wisdom in it, right? And so rebirthing or this type of energy work or breath work and 12 step, they don't like each other. They're like parents that got divorced. It's like a bad thing. And so it was really, really interesting to watch those two things come together in this kind of new braid in me and have it make sense in a really interesting kind of way. I do feel like the child of the two parents that could not understand each other. And I'm like, I get you though. And I
Mhm.
totally see how it works together. And so if you can get over your ego of needing to be the only truth, we actually discovered there's something really good here. There's something really beautiful here for a lot of different people, especially because you guys oppose each other,
Right.
you know? So yeah, so when I was about 5 years sober, no, it was always there for me. When I was about 5 to 6 years sober, it hit me really, really hard that I couldn't just stay in the 12 step realm and stay sober, that I was going to have to do, go seek outside help or just continue to explore like what else was there, what else was out here for me to try to understand myself and what were other ways that uh, I could explore the experience that I was having. Um, but the guiding force in all of that exploration was service. I really felt like that was a shield for me that I protected myself with, because I would walk into environments with people that I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Like these people are kind of sound culty, or this sounds weird, or like, oh, I'm gonna go. I'm trying to honor, not having contempt prior to investigation, which is a 12-step principle.
Mm.
But I would walk into environments and go, oh, this is why they tell you not to leave the waiting room.
Yeah.
Because you have people like this out here that you're like, oh, I'm good. See you
Yeah.
later. But I really needed to do that. I really needed to do that. And I also needed to find, I've come across a lot of people who there was a religious element of 12 step that was hard. There was a kind of an element to it that felt too similar to how their homes were and their upbringing, if they grew up in like very Christian families and stuff.
Yeah.
I've encountered so many of those people, and it's been so important to encounter them and to talk with them and to hear their experience and to hear what has kind of not worked for them in 12 step, and be a person to say, I completely hear you, I totally understand, and there are ways for you to engage with your recovery that don't require you to pledge allegiance to attitudes and practices and worldviews that you don't feel comfortable with. I mean, it's, down to, over the years, I've gotten a chance to work with, people that have revamped um, the big book,
Yeah.
changed the language of it to be more inclusive, ones that more are more attuned to women and their experience, or LGBTQIA plus community, like what their experience is. But one of the first things you start to discover is a woman taking the steps. That's a different experience than a man taking the steps.
Yeah.
Powerlessness means something different to even a white woman than it does to a white man. And then you add like a woman of color. We have to talk about this differently.
Yeah.
It's unfair and imbalanced to expect that the people that are really affected by addiction to accept this very narrow language used to describe the steps of recovery. right? I mean, I think that it's been an interesting part of my growth as a human being in my recovery has been like, there's a lot, there's space, there's room for us to explore these ideas with different language in different ways. That I want to gift the notion of fearlessness to recovery in the sense of if we've done the work and we've become strong in a foundational way, meaning that we feel safe to trust ourselves walking into environments, then be willing to be curious about God in different ways. Be willing to be curious about the experiences of other people. One thing that I find really interesting is that, even like the old, like the back in the day movies about recovery, like what was the movie Michael Keaton did? He was one of the first I think it was Clean and Sober.
Mm.
uh 28 days or whatever when Sandra Bullock goes to rehab. So you have all the movies about like with the white actor going to rehab or the white person going to and who's their counselor? A black
A
person.
black person, yeah.
And so I'm like, where's the movie about the time before? How did that person get there? Because the reality is that from much of the recovery world, the wellness world, this is a soapbox I love to stand on and go full Mussolini from. It's really bigoted. It's really separated. It really, really is. And that recovery can feel really monoethnic. It can feel really clicky and weird and like uncomfortable. And I'm always curious about the fact that, the canary in the coal mine of any social ill are the minorities. They are the people that are having the issue and nobody is paying attention.
Mhm.
And it only becomes real or is taken seriously or becomes like something we have to deal with as a nation when enough white people are being affected by it that it now becomes a real thing, right? And
Yeah.
so we have to be willing to call that out. That's it. That's inherent into the way recovery culture has been. Wellness, the wellness world. Oh my God. It's just, I'm just constantly like, are you people listening to yourselves? Are you listening to what you're saying? Like you're making arguments that only a certain kind of person can make and feel that it's true. Everybody else thinks that that argument is an erroneous argument because white folk in the world and in the world of recovery have had a very specific experience. I mean, just the way mental health and healing is handled publicly in the world, the way a person of color is treated in a state of mental crisis very often is a diametrically opposing experience than someone who's not of color having a mental crisis. And so I think that we've got to be real. We have to start having those honest conversations about even our tools for wellness have been predicated on prejudice and bigotry and a lot of like gross concepts that we're trying to extract from how we think about life and interaction and our social contract with one another. And it's another reason why I love the breath practice because nothing matters. None of that shit matters. If you're here and you're breathing, this is yours. If you're here and alive, it's yours. Like I don't get to gatekeep it. I don't get to tell you what you're supposed to do with it. I don't get to tell you how you're supposed to feel about it. I'm not going to culture vulture you into a very specific nuance of what it means to breathe, which is what happens a lot, which I find really kind of challenging emotionally to confront, where it's like, this idea is salient. This idea is a good idea. You don't need to dress it up in a cultural costume in order for you to present the idea. And it's unfortunate because, we are Americans and we are a corporate colony. That's what Jamestown was long before the Pilgrims arrived. Let's remember that, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe in brand equity. And the thing that we in America really put a lot of the premium equity is cultural equity, cultural brand equity. And you know what has a lot of cultural brand equity in America is yoga. But you know what doesn't have a lot of cultural brand equity in America? Indian people.
Mm.
So you have a aspect of wellness, healing in American culture that's completely bereft of the people that created it
Right.
and is populated with really kind of vapid, unconscious, bigoted people I mean, and their bigotry looks like classism more than anything else. Cause like, I'm not racist. I just only talk to people who wear this brand, or like, I
Right.
go on a date with a guy if he doesn't drive this kind of car. It's like, cool. I mean, you're not racist, but you might
Yeah.
as well be.
Right. Yeah.
But I like your yoga pants, Becky.
Becky. That's so funny. Yeah, and I do really love that you touched on that, uh, starting with just the fact that I know I was not spiritual when I went into 12 step, and I was actually more of an atheist growing up, which is funny that I'm a medium now, and I'm a full spiritualist, but I'm not religious, because, I believe that we're all part of the same thing and that there are no doesn't structures can be kind of damaging. Um,
Religion, the comic books of creation.
Yes, yes. I mean, it creates too much division. It's like the bottom line is we're souls, we're love, we're here to
Right.
love each other. Let's keep it simple. But it is difficult because I know people too that need, I mean, I don't want to take someone's inventory, but basically would really benefit from a 12-step program. Um, but they're like, nope, I don't believe in God. And it's not, to be clear, 12 step isn't saying you have to believe in God or the Bible or any of that. However, they do use the word God in a lot of the language. Now they tell you, hopefully, when I started, there were a lot of people just reminding me it doesn't mean the biblical God. It's just higher power, whatever that is to you. Someone said to me, it could be a doorknob. Just give it up to something else other than yourself. And that resonated with me. But there are people I know that are like, nope, I don't like that. I'm not going in because of that. And again, also what you touched on with the trouble of, I also know people that are addicted to the meetings themselves. And when I was like 21, I dated a guy that could not stay sober without going to a meeting every single. He'd been sober since he was 12. Like he'd started using when he was like 8. And now we were like 25 or whatever he was. And he was so codependent with the program that he would actually, I didn't know better, at the time, he would like make me go to meetings with him, which is so inappropriate. Just that alone was inappropriate. And it was like he got angry one day and was like, I'm mad because I didn't go to a meeting today and now my whole day is ruined. So that can become also a crutch. But I also, as someone who it really worked for, I think the program, without the program, I would not probably even be alive today. However,
Yeah.
now I'm kind of leaning more into I don't go to meetings anymore. I now really do am sort of finding my center with meditation, yoga, breath work, that sort of thing that I think is so important. So I love that you're talking about it doesn't just have to be one thing. And also it can be a supplement. It can be but I think most of all it's like maintaining a lifestyle without being addicted to the thing that's the medicine, if you will.
Well, I mean, yes, and I think I suppose that may be the most critical question for every person to be asking themselves, whether they are in active addiction or in active recovery or somewhere in between. What is the thing you're using as a bypass?
Mhm.
And, one of the things that we see in the rooms a lot is the spiritual bypass, where you see that, people comporting themselves in a way that is pretty reprehensible. They engage in ways that are not good.
Oh,
They're
yes.
shitty and ugly and yucky and selfish and all the things that is antithetical to the principles we're trying to exist in, right? And they will use the spiritual bypass of like, yeah, I'm talking to God about it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, or I don't have to be good to you, person in the world, because I'm right with God.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of righteous indignation stuff that's like everybody does it. Everybody does it. And people do it with, I'm talking to my guys in the meeting. It's like, great,
Yeah.
but you could talk to your wife or your kids too. They're in your life also, and they might maybe want some answers on some of your behavior. I mean, I just think that, mine is critical analysis. That's my bypass. That's the one I have to call myself on. And that's the hypocrisy one. I reserve the right to not engage or take it seriously or be fully present if I'm like, that guy's a hypocrite. I'm not listening to him.
Mhm.
And then there's a voice that's like, oh, Aliah, okay, you should listen to him. Listen to what is happening here. Like I lose when I hit the bypass because I'm reserving the right to not engage fully. and not be willing to be wrong, not be willing to get called out. And really, in many ways, I mean, if for me, if it comes down to the concept of a creator or creative intelligence or God, if I'm being dishonest, I'm forfeiting an opportunity to see the presence of my creator. Because if I'm holding on to something and being dishonest, if I come to the table with that and I'm willing to confess, I'm going to see my creator in the people around me that show up to say, thank you for telling the truth.
Mhm.
Or I did that too, by the way.
Yeah.
Or at least people coming up to you and reassuring you that it's okay. It's okay. That happens. But when I utilize the spiritual bypass of people pleasing and controlling how you see me and what you think of me, which is something I still deal with now that the addiction to substance, alcohol, drugs, long gone, but addiction to that, addiction to how you see me, trying to control how you see me and what you think of me, that's still in play. It's in play a lot. And so I've got to be mindful and I have to be willing to, I mean, to whatever extent I can that day, call myself out, you know. And I think that, it's interesting. It's parenthood for me has been just another continued blessing of recovery, because I don't know that I certainly don't think I would have chosen to have children if I wasn't sober.
Oh, and you're the best mom. I can't even imagine that. Yeah, you're such an incredible mom.
My rage
Yeah.
has been something that I've had to battle my whole life.
Yeah.
And so to have children that one, they don't have to see me loaded, which is one big thing, which is a big, big, big thing.
Mhm.
They know me as a safe person in their life. Like that's an unwavering thing. I mean, God willing, that I don't screw it up in the days going forward, but I'm a safe person to them. And having the ability to say, I don't know how to do this. I need help. Reaching out and asking for guidance, or hitting my knees and getting quiet to receive some awareness or guidance. I mean, these are all things that I learned through recovery. And they're not big, kind of lofty spiritual concepts. They're just like basic behavior interventions that clear a space for me to actually get present. And in many ways, that's the great spiritual liberation of the breath practice. It's just you getting into the machine and turning it on and being there for a little while and seeing what it's like in there, and not letting anybody tell you what it's supposed to be or who's supposed to be in there with you or how it's supposed to feel. That it's the experience of humbly stepping in to the life that you've been living and being present with it to see what it wants to show you. And that's been a big that's been the learning curve, I guess. Um, the beginning of life has been me being terrified, wondering what's going to happen to me. And now me being terrified sometimes too,
Yeah.
but kind of curious and excited about what life is going to show me and reveal to me. And that's been a lot of growth. And I can't, I mean, I could be really glib and smug, but a lot of that has to do with 12 step. It has to
Yeah.
the principles and the concepts and the book and doing the work in the steps and finding strong people to align with that never asked me for any of the weird egoic stuff that gets asked of people in the rooms, right? We've had all interactive with sponsors that were like, why are you telling her that?
Yeah.
That's none of your business. So why are you even talking to her about that?
Right. And there are people in the rooms that also are still dysregulated, and have been going to those rooms for years and years and years. And it's kind of like that spiritual bypass where they're still behaving inappropriately. They're still narcissistic. They're still kind of doing those things.
Totally.
It's not a perfect thing. Yeah.
It's not a perfect, and we're not in it. That's not, there's no promise of perfection. In fact,
No.
the opposite of that.
Yeah. Progress, not perfection
you
is the
know,
whole point.
right. The other thing that has really been meaningful to me all these 20 years is principles before personalities.
Absolutely.
because we are a cult of personality country. I mean, that's
Oh, yeah.
why we are getting drug around by our proverbial nut sacks by every politician that shows up, every
Yeah.
influencer. Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, no, I will not be influenced by you
Right.
because you are a personality. You are not
Mhm.
a full human. So I will not be influenced by you.
Yes.
But
And
the framework
yeah.
of social interaction is all personality and no principles. And I'm waiting for the person, the leader, like that's in my prayer every day.
Oh,
Like, leader,
yeah.
we need a leader. Who's the leader? We need a leader. We need to call the leader out. And whoever that leader is, give them my number and I'll show up to help them.
Yes. I know. I know. And I do wanna ask you too, because you said so much about that, and this is not, coming from a place of, like, endorsing 12-step. I mean, I or not endorsing it, but I
No,
do
I have a lot of criticism of it, but I
yeah.
can't deny what a profound and powerful opportunity is for people that need help.
Yeah, and I wanna ask you about that because I know for me what worked, and I was someone who was like, "I am not holding hands with people and doing a chant. That's corny. Keep coming back, and works it if you work it and you're worth it." And they were like, "Am I really? Just really?" But, I learned to sort of embrace that and be like, "It's corny, but these things are sayings and cliches for a reason, like progress, not perfection, and the serenity prayer, which is so wonderful for me. But it's also being of service, um, giving it up to a higher power, being rigorously honest, but also these tools that it's given me, as you said, yeah, I still have my triggers. I still have my times when I'm like, I feel my fourth step was all about people pleasing, and that is my drug. That is validation and people pleasing. And now I can go, okay, I can feel that coming up in me. So what are the tools I have?
Right.
So I would love to know for you, especially you were so young, what was it that first inspired you to surrender and go into 12 step? And then what kept you there and kind of what kept you sober?
What got me there was, I mean, humiliation. I mean, really, I say it all the time whenever I make a pitch, is alcohol saved my life.
Hmm.
Alcohol, the specific element of the spirits that are alcohol, they saved me because I'm a drug addict. I'm a good drug addict and I can do drugs alone for months.
Yeah.
And I'm also kind of a strong broad, so I can do a lot of drugs. And I like to do them alone. So
Hmm.
it was very easy for me to kind of just recede into the darkness with my dope. And people would kind of come and to see me if they were brave enough. And I really was far more under control socially on drugs than on alcohol. It was the quiet despair and angry. I mean, I was not a pleasant person to be around. I was funny, but I was really enraged. Um, but the alcohol made me a mess, a big public mess. And it really, interestingly enough, I was in a relationship in New York, and he was really judgmental about my drug use. I mean, he was just like a total sadist, alcoholic lunatic, but he had a lot of judgment on how I was doing things. So
Right.
it was perfect.
Sounds perfect. Yeah.
The unpleasable and the people pleaser are gonna run roughshod all over the um, but I was trying to like tamp down my drug use and just can increase my alcohol consumption. And it was a nightmare. I mean, it was like, I mean, I was not a get drunk, have sex with your boyfriend. I was like, get drunk and try to fight everybody in the bar. That was me.
Can't picture
Arguing with
it,
the
but
police, like monstrous,
yeah.
nightmare, lunatic, no fun for anybody. But because I was such a oozing, grotesque mess that there was no way to deny it.
Yeah.
There was no way to hide it. I couldn't hide it. And so what brought me to recovery was frightening humiliation when I was drunk. Um, I mean, like the fact that I didn't catch a charge in my last drunk was pretty astonishing. with it was like I was in a 7-hour walking blackout. I went out. It was my husband's, Dustin's 21st birthday was my last drunk. So also,
Wow.
like, you don't understand. I was in another relationship. He was dating he was going to get married to another person after that. I mean, it's like you just don't know
No.
the truth of the flow and the current of our life, like the energy that is dovetailing into our life. We don't know ultimately what it's supposed to amount to. You know what I mean? And we reserve the right to think we know all kinds of shit that we don't know. And so it's like really interesting that my last drunk was his 21st birthday, and the person who I the relationship I was really afraid I had completely destroyed that night was my relationship with Dustin.
That's so full circle.
You know what
That's
I
so
mean?
crazy. Yeah.
So yeah, so it was like it was the pinnacle of my out of control blackout lunacy, pinnacle of my violence. I mean, I terrorized, physically terrorized the man that I was with for hours, to the point where he was so exhausted, and just like I was chasing him around the house um with an intent to annihilate him. I mean, the rage that I felt in my body was, I mean, the only thing I can maybe compare it to is like what it feels like to be a werewolf, or like what it feels like to be like is a bestial feeling. And at one point of the night, he grabbed me. I have a faint memory of this. Like, he grabbed my arms and looked at me and was crying and
Mm.
saying, "Why are you doing this? What did I do to you? What did I do?" And some human part of me heard that. And this really shows just like what my my addictive behavior, what I would become. He was crying and he asked me why was I doing this? And I stopped, and I don't know if I said anything. I don't have a memory of that, but I stopped kind of coming at him, and I went to the foot of my bed, and I curled up at the foot of my bed and passed out. But it was like I didn't even feel like a human being at that point. I felt like all I was an animal. There was no humanity left in me. I was a rage-filled animal, and I was about to hurt him. Like I was about to hurt him badly. Um, and then the next morning we woke up, and it was like from the moment I woke up, it was like did you ever see that movie, The Event Horizon?
No, but I've
And it
heard
was
of it.
about a
Yeah.
spaceship that got like taken to hell. And all they had was this recording from the crew that went to hell, but it was like these like flashes of people screaming and stuff, and then it was black. That's what my consciousness was when I woke up. I like woke up, and it was just kind of like fuzzy, and then I'd see in my head like, and then it would go black again, and I'd be like, wait a minute, did I do that? Was I in there? Who was in that picture I just saw in my head? And it went on throughout the day, through the morning. And I remember I went in my bathroom to toke a bowl, because that's obviously what you have to do when you drink. And I remember going to hit it, and I don't know if I hit it, but I went to hit it, and I said out loud, "I can't fucking do this anymore.
Wow.
I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore." And I looked at him, and he was with me, and I could see it on his face. Like, he didn't even know who I was at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I had hurt him so deeply and so badly. And he couldn't look at me. He didn't recognize me, and he didn't want to look at me. And I knew I deserved all of it.
Hmm.
And I put the bowl down. I walked into my parents' backyard and like stood, just kind of like stood in the backyard, like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
And it was like an errant, like, shooting star across my brain. And it was, call Jake. And I called Jake.
That's your
And
brother.
my brother, yeah, sorry. Sorry, I should have just said my brother. I called him. And I called him, and he picked up the phone, and I don't remember if I spoke first, but I just remember his voice. Because he goes, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" Like he knew.
Yeah.
Like he knew. And I just was like, it was bad. It was really bad. It's the worst it's ever been. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I need you to get here. And I don't know where you are. He's like, "I'm in LA. I'll be there in 15 minutes." And let's talk about Godspeed.
Yeah.
He's like 15. I don't even know how he got from where he was to me. And he got to where I was, and his sponsor showed up and they 12 step me.
Wow.
My brother and his sponsor, this old man, and my brother took me to an Indian restaurant and we sat there and they just asked me questions. And they were just like, how are you feeling? What happened? Who, just they just walked me through it. They just like basically had me walk through the wreckage of the accident
Yeah.
and then asked me like, do you want to feel this way anymore? And I clearly no. And they're like, all right, we can help you, but you have to do what we say. And I didn't fight. I'm so grateful for that. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful that my like bitchy little intellectual bleh wasn't present, was still passed out behind me because they were just like, you just have to do what we say. And we're not going to help you if you are you. Like you
Yeah.
take what we have to give you or find someone else, and that's fine. And I just said, I'll do whatever you say. And they
That
and they
is amazing.
that was it. I mean, and it was like, and from that day forward, like now I have to actively remind myself of like, no, you don't have to do anything they say. Because
Right.
I come from a family, like my father's one of those people that's like, you can never turn down an AA request. He believes in that and he lives by that. And he's one of those addicted to meetings guys. He's
Yeah.
addicted to the program now, guys. But he believes in it. And so if someone calls him and they're like, Jim, I need you, he shows up. He
Right.
gets it. And as much as that can feel, there's all kinds of criticism and judgment of that, totally, absolutely. But truthfully, it's never steered me wrong.
Right.
Like whenever someone from the program said, hey, can you help me with this thing? Or can I talk to you about this thing? Or will you lead for me? Or can I get a ride? There's always been some critical nutrient in that interaction. I have felt the presence of
Mhm.
the life that I am part of, the bigger life that we are all part of. I could feel it.
Yeah.
So I don't question it that much.
Of course.
They took me to a meeting that day. The only meeting that we could find was a meeting at a Christian elementary school. And I'll never forget opening the door to the classroom, and it was all little kids' desks with adults sitting at the little kids'
That's
desks.
hilarious.
And I opened the door and they all like turned. I felt like they all turned and looked at me. And to
Right.
me, that snapshot in my mind is a metaphor for what 12 step is. It's kindergarten for adults who never learned how to do the basic things. Like we didn't learn how to do the basic things. And so we need basic help. We need basic help. And it's been true ever since.
Wow. That because I know you, I got really emotional as you were telling. I started to cry when you were telling the story about your last drunk. I guess I don't, and I was like, why am I crying? And part of it is just, obviously compassion, compassion, but also knowing you now. And I can imagine that person because you're telling me about that person, but I don't see a shred of that in you now. It just made me sad. I was like, because like I do see you as such a powerful woman. And I know that doesn't mean you're not also vulnerable. I mean, you are one of like the funniest, sweetest people ever, and loving. But yeah, it breaks my heart. I think for me too, just thinking about we didn't know what we didn't know. And we were literally just hanging on for dear life with no coping tools and doing all we knew how to do, which was to act out. And I think it breaks my heart for sweet little Aliah, I think because, and for myself having acted out in ways too, how you had this tough exterior. But I think that's what breaks me. It's like this tough exterior of, of this anger, but inside, you're just this broken little scared kid. And that's why also when you then brought up the desks in the kindergarten, I start to cry again because it's like we do these things because we're in pain and we're trying to escape from them. And for whatever reason, like you said, I got nobody to blame. I have the most loving parents in the world. But just the world, the that we don't really learn a lot of the times. How do we regulate these big feelings? How do we I know I was very dysregulated and completely unable to manage my emotions. And so it was just like a bleh, like vomiting and putting my stuff on other people, looking for them to make me feel okay and safe. And that was a burden on a lot of people, and it wasn't fair to do to other people, but we didn't know.
Right.
And that's what I think is so beautiful too, is that then you go into program and there's this, hey, literally just do what we say. And look, I'm not saying every sponsor don't listen blindly to the people because they're human too, and they might be wrong. But for the most part, there is a structure for a reason. The 12 steps are the 12 steps for a reason.
Right. I mean, and absolutely. And I think that, I feel like you can measure the fear of the child inside of each person based on how scary their armor looks.
Oh, yes.
And then we know that, right? We know that, we've seen it. It's like it's kind of like a cliche thing, but it's so real that bestial aspect of me. I mean, that was another layer of my recovery, because that, coming into the rooms, that violence and aggression and hostility, especially in a woman,
Yeah.
something that's heavily frowned upon socially. It's not integrated. We don't know how to integrate it healthfully into our psyche, into our well-being. So even when I came into recovery, there was a lot of messaging around, like, you got to do something about that. You got to deal with that. You got to do something about that. And as much as I was like, okay, yes, I'll do. Yes. Okay. 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 But there was something in me that kind of felt some kind of felt some kind of way about it.
Yeah.
And the truth for me, the longer I've been sober, is the thing I have to do about that is invite her in. Because if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be here. That when because I was the kind of addict where my my desire to annihilate was so intense that I was constantly in environments where I was very unsafe. Very, 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 very unsafe. And I today feel total certainty that the only reason why I walked out of those places was because of that bestial, rageful part of me, this aspect of me that almost like became a creature to protect the little girl, because there was really nobody protecting her.
Yeah.
And so that aspect of me, that aspect of my psyche emerged as a totally necessary part of me. And that it was part of my recovery, discovery and recovery was, I have to honor her. I have to integrate her. I have to stop casting her out in the cold and saying, like, you're too dangerous, because I'm looking in her eyes and it's my eyes. And she's like, yeah, but I love you. I might be dangerous, but I saved your ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was the recognition of, oh my God, you need to come inside here. You're a part of me. And by rejecting that aspect of me, it distorted it more. And that now, today, as a woman, a female authority, I feel comfortable saying that I exist as a
Yeah.
feminine authority in life and in the world. And what that means is, really, people are around me and they go, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I want to be nearer to you.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's because I think we're built for that. We can smell that kind of energy because we're looking for it. We're looking for, I do think, safe feminine energy, because it's where we come from. It's where we
Yeah.
spring, and we encounter it so little because we're not taught how to engage with it. So there's an element of that ferocious part of me, I would argue, is the thing that people feel in me that makes them want to be near me, is that bestial part of me, because they feel safe with
Yeah.
her. They feel safe with her. And so that's been, this last decade has been
Yeah.
that, and the integration of that, and having all kinds of, kind of schismatic experiences with God, and like losing touch, feeling disconnected and coming back, making children, uh radically shifted my experience of God, because I hit a place of, wait a minute, like, I am God to these kids. Like, I'm the source place. I'm the tree. This is shifting my perception and the way that I'd organized myself in my relationship to God. So that was a big transition for me, that I'm in an even deeper love relationship. I'm even in an even closer relationship, I believe, with higher power, higher self. Um, that that is, to me today, God is the maternal energy that we all spring from. And it makes, people love to get irritated and said that's just semantics. It's like, cool. It's, because I shifted it from calling, the father,
Yeah.
which is the Judeo-Christian, the Abrahamic practice of the masculinized concept of God. And for me, after the wrestling, I was like, oh, God's my mom.
Hmm.
That's why it never felt right. And then people want to argue that it's like just semantic. It's like, well, do you feel the same way about your mother that you do about your father? What's the difference? Well, there's difference. It's not just semantic. That the source place for me feels feminine. So I'm going to honor that. That feels like a core authentic truth. Like, okay, that feels true for me. So that's where I'm going to go. That's how I'm going to do it and see if it makes a difference in my experience. And it has. It's made a radical difference. I don't push that on other people or
Right.
proselytize or tell them they need to. No, no, no. In
That's for
fact,
you.
that's your job. I think one of the biggest problems we're faced with is this belief that, oh, it worked for me, it'll work for you. It's like, well, hold on a second. This worked for you. Fantastic. Something's going to work for them. Their job is to find out what's going to work for you and do that. But we're too busy trying to tell people what's going to work for them.
Yeah. Um, I think I'm just
I know it's been
gonna
tons. It's been
no, I
just
was
like,
gonna say I'm gonna end it there because that's such a beautiful place to end. But I just want to ask you too, I would assume, do you accept clients via Zoom as well as
yeah.
in person, I assume. So where can people find you? I will have
So
information,
I have,
but to
I'll
work with.
send you, I actually have a group that's going to be in LA that's happening this Saturday. I'll send you the flyer for that.
Yeah.
And then I see people, my primary practice is one-on-one work, in person, in my office here in LA, but I do work with people via Zoom. We process, we talk through, we do the mindful inquiry process, and then we learn some dynamic meditation techniques so they can start utilizing these tools. Because that's one of the main things about my practice is I want each person that encounters me and encounters this work to walk away feeling like they are more connected to it so that they have access to it because it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's like your liberation is about you and you got to find it. And I'm here to help you however I can.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And definitely we'll have more information. What else did you wanted to say
Oh
something
no, I
else
was
as
just going to
well?
say, 'cause I kind of detoured for a second. I can send I have a LinkedIn page where people can kind of see a breakdown
Ah,
of what the work looks like. I'm super analog. I just don't do a lot of it. I haven't needed to, so I don't know what that's all about.
yeah.
So
Me
I don't
neither.
have all the, the magnets and stuff. I don't have all that.
Right.
But I have some basic landing pages where people can find me, and
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful to have been able to talk to you today.
Thank you. This was awesome, and I'm so excited to share it. I know it's gonna inspire and, I think help a lot of people too,
I
so
hope.
that's why we do this work. Thank you, Aliah Whitmore, for being here with me, my dear friend.
Yes. Thank you so much.